All right, all right. Here we go. Welcome everyone to Nonprofit Nuggets. This is a short conversation with amazing professionals to give you actionable insights to key areas of your nonprofit organization. I'm not sure if I can get any more adverbs or adjectives in that introduction, but that is what we have there. I'm Brad Tisdale. I'm a fractional CFO and I'm your host of the show. And I'm so glad to have with me James Misner. James and I do some work together. I've really come to respect his knowledge and experience in the fundraising field. So, James, thank you for being on and helping here.
Yeah, Brad, thanks so much for having me. I can't wait to dive in today.
Yeah, it's going to be great. Hey, I do want to say this is a little bit of a milestone. When I started this show, I guess back in the fall, I went to one of my friends who I go to church with who does a podcast, and he's like, go do it. If you can get to 10 episodes, then like you're there, like you're over the hump and you can like get it. And this is my 10th episode. And so here we go. Here we go. Let's go. And
Congratulations, Brad, and nonprofit nuggets.
thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. This is we're gonna celebrate. All right, first serious thing. What is your favorite chicken nugget of choice?
Oh, goodness. The answer is clear, and it's easy, and it's obvious, and it has to be Chick-fil-A.
Oh, there you go. Chick-fil-A. Okay, okay, that's right. And you must have little kids as well, too.
I have three small ones, and Chick-fil-A is a weekly, at least a weekly, if not more, dinner grab for us.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, we're the same, and I wish they would like go public, like give an IPO so I could buy some stock, but not going to be the case. So let's jump in and talk about fundraising here, James. I'm excited about this. Why are you drawn to the space of helping nonprofits do fundraising well? Why does that prick your heart? Why do you do this each and every day?
You know, not-for-profits hold a special place in society, and that's because they're attending to issues and problems that businesses, the markets, governments haven't been able to solve, and they haven't been able to monetize. So not-for-profits are dealing with these really intractable problems. Sometimes they're generational problems. And I want my work to matter. I just don't want to go make a widget for somebody. You know, I'd like to invest in a company that does that and is really profitable, but I want to spend my time solving things that others haven't been able to solve. And the reality is that of the 1.5 million not-for-profits in the United States today, only 2% of them, 2% ever break $1 million in annual revenue,
Really?
and only 0.4% ever break 10 million in revenue. And some of the best solutions to our biggest problems are housed in those small organizations and haven't been able to break through yet.
Man, I love that. That's really cool. I did not know those numbers, but that just shows you how like hard it is to do some of this work, this nonprofit work. To even if you have a heart for it, you want to do it, you want to make change, you want to meet your mission, but it's just hard to do that. And partially because there's probably a revenue problem, there's a fundraising issue there, and so it makes this conversation very relevant. Now, I do want to talk about some practical steps, and we'll get there, but I also want to go a little bit of a different approach too. We're both kind of consultants. We're consultants, and we have a heart for nonprofits, and we want to help nonprofits, me from the finance side, you from the fundraising side. And this is kind of a growing thing. There's a lot of people that are doing this kind of work. I see more and more people doing this even on the side of their W-2. And, there's a lot of good people out there doing that. So tell me, James, why do people call you? What are they needing when they call you, James?
Yeah, when they call me, the short answer is that they feel stuck. And there's a variety of reasons that they feel stuck. Either they've been really successful and they've grown and they've hit a plateau and they don't know how to keep growing to that next level, or just frankly, they got overwhelmed and don't have the capacity to even think about the next leg of their growth journey. Or sadly, sometimes they call because they're declining. But the clients who are the most fun, at least for me, are the ones who have big plans and ambition, and they just don't know how to get it funded yet. And I'm a big believer that the size of your budget isn't an indicator of the impact that you're making. The size of your budget is just an indicator of your current fundraising program. And I like the idea of helping people who are frankly a lot smarter than me raise the funds that they need to go and solve these big problems, in the world.
Yeah, no, I love that. I love having the abundance mentality too. Just thinking like it's out there. You just have to build the infrastructure and do the right things to get in front of people and to grow the budget in some ways, right? And so, um, yeah, there's a lot of resources out there, and it's like, okay, so how do we go and kind of engage all that, right?
Yeah.
To benefit and let people see the impact of the mission. Well, that's great. I really like that. So I mean, when you step into a client or you're looking at clients, what are the right ingredients to make sure that your consulting experience, that the client's consulting experience goes well from a fundraising perspective? How does that, I mean, what have you seen there and learned?
Yeah, absolutely. This is an amazing question. And I can't answer, obviously, for every not-for-profit out there. But there are a lot of what I call big binder consulting firms out there. They have dozens or hundreds of employees, and literally you consult with them and they just throw the same binder at you as they throw to everybody else. I purposely don't do that. I like to focus on small and mid-size not-for-profits that can't afford the big binder firms. I actually interview my clients as much as they interview me, because I found that there are certain prerequisites for fundraising success. So if you're out there and you're thinking like, okay, how do I get a good consultant? There are several things that you just need to have in-house for that to go well. And the first starts with the leader, the CEO, the executive director, the president, the pastor, whatever your organization calls it, and the whole leadership team. Now, they don't need to know how to fundraise, but one key to success is that they need to be able to put themselves above the mission. Put the mission above themselves.
Okay.
And I found that a lot of these small and mid-sized not-for-profits, they're very personality driven, which is fine to an extent. But when it comes time to really do the hard work, of raising money and going out there, if the person cares more about themselves and the lead team cares more about themselves than the mission, there's very little I can do to change that. And there's very little a consultant can do to change that. That organization is going to hit some rocky roads before they really figure things out and begin to grow. For the rest of the organization, I think it's really simple. Do they have a missional ambition, or is it just nice to have more money? If it's nice to have more money, you're not going to do great with a lot of consultants because there's not a reason to go get it. But if the organization wants to grow because they're solving a big problem, then I think they're very well suited. Is there a can-do attitude that you have? I think another thing that's really important is, is there a personality fit? Some people need a very linear, very process-oriented approach to things. And then you need a very linear and very process-oriented approach to things. Brad, you and I both serve a client together, you as CFO, me as CDO. They are not a linear process-oriented client.
Right.
They are a fly by the seat of your pants client. And so you need to make sure, you have the personality fit. So if you're a not-for-profit leader looking at this, make sure you actually really want to grow before you spend your money trying to do it. And then make sure you find a person or inside of a firm or a firm that fits your style. There's no reason to pay money for a relationship that's going to feel grating for you. But if your leader can't put the mission above themselves, probably best to fix that first before calling somebody else for help.
Right. That's right. Now, I love that list. And one that I really resonate with, even on my side, is just the knowledge and realization that they do need help, whether it's finance or fundraising. And there's an openness to that, because if you bring a consultant in, they're going to probably give you some good directions and give you some thoughts and try to help you move things along. And that's the job of the consultant. And if you're not open to new input, if you're not open to looking at things differently than they always have been, it's not going to go well. So completely agree. I love that. Just realizing that, there's going to be some new thinking that's infused in here, and just being open and welcoming of that. Yeah.
I mean, exactly. If you don't want to change, don't hire a consultant. Consultants are there to help you change and get better. And if you're resistant, your board is resistant, the org just likes things the way that they are, don't do it.
Yeah. That's right. That's right. That's right. And I also like to, this will go to my next question, but kind of what you're saying is make sure there's a fit, a personality fit. That kind of goes into, I think, when people think consulting, they might think of that big book that's being thrown at them, or they might think of this big voice that's coming in, it's going to change everything and do all the. But really, it doesn't have to be that case, especially for somebody like you and I, where we come in, we want to come alongside the team
Yeah.
and be a part of the team. So how do you do that, James? How do you integrate in with the team and not just have this big like top down approach where you're trying to tell them what to do? Any thoughts or tips on that?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think part of this comes to the idea of passion.
Hmm.
Uh, is helping an organization get better at fundraising a gig just to pay the bills, or do you really care about it?
Yeah.
If it's a gig to pay the bills, you're going to come to your, 2 or 3 scheduled a week meetings. You're going to, do the shtick. But if you really care about that organization and you really care about people, you're going to go that extra mile. What I try to do is balance, and it's a really hard balance for me. It's kind of like knife edge, credit card edge, being a part of the team. So I can literally, be elbow to elbow with people as they're learning and as they're growing. But you have to stay enough on the outside so that you can really get a full scope picture and give, unbiased advice back up to the leader, to the executive function, to the CEO. And one of the things that happens, the longer you're in-house at an organization, your voice just blends with the chorus of other voices there. So there's a really, specific blend that I try to take of let's be in there, let's get our hands dirty, let's roll up our sleeves and do this. But let's stay far enough away that my perspective isn't influenced by relationships and friendships that form people. And I can stick to data and the facts to help the whole organization grow. And it's a really hard balance. If I err on any side of this, I probably get too enmeshed, inside the organizations because I just want to see them succeed. But I think that's an important thing for consultants to do.
Yeah. Sorry. I completely agree. Keeping that line, being able to stay somewhat objective outside so you can provide that professionalism. And that's the value that a consultant can really bring, is to bring that outside perspective. And everybody knows, like, when you come in and even you work for a W-2 job or come in, you've only got like a year or so where you have these new fresh ideas, and then you just become a part of the machine, so to speak, right? And so as a consultant, you always want to have that outside objective. That's good for the client. That's what you want to be able to do, as opposed to just becoming a part of how things have always been, right?
That's right.
Yeah, no, that's great. Okay, well, good. Well, let's transition a little bit to some more practical kind of things. We're talking here, the audience is, like we're saying, executive director, president, MGO, pastor. And so let's do a little kind of storyline here. So say I'm the nonprofit leader, and I'm sitting here and I've gotten things going. I've gotten past that first little 0.4% that you talked about, and I'm raising a little money. I've been the main, fundraiser for a few years. I got some employees underneath me, and so I'm trying to, but my budget's growing. I got more, and so I'm trying to figure out what are my next steps. Like, where do I turn? And I tell you what, when I start thinking about fundraising, it can be overwhelming. We also focus on major donors or small donors or software systems or whatever. Yep. How do I get my board? So I know that's an unfair question and kind of a generalized question, but where would you tell somebody to start in that process as they consider it?
Yeah, Brad, here's what I'm going to do, because this is the question for most small and mid-sized not-for-profits, right? Yeah. It's, the person who started it shouldering the whole fundraising burden, or they've divided it up between 3, 4, 5 people, and they all spend 10 hours trying to figure it out, per week. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to tell you, first of all, what not to do.
Okay.
Then I'm going to tell you what influences my thinking of this. And then I'm going to tell you exactly what I would do if that not-for-profit came to me as a client. Okay. Right. So let's start with what not to do. And people do this all the time. You look at the big organization, right? If you're a $1 million organization, you look at the big $1 billion organization and you say, hey, let's just replicate what they're doing. Right. And that is the worst idea ever. Okay. One, because you're not a big organization. You don't have the money, the capacity, the capability in your systems and processes to do that. So don't do that. Number 2, don't look at vanity metrics. Okay.
Right.
You have to look at metrics that actually build your bottom line. So a lot of people will say, well, we need to grow. Let's go get more social media followers.
Right.
That's great. It's incredibly hard to convert somebody from social media to actually being a donor. And then 3, don't try to do it all yourself. You can't do it all at one time. It's impossible. So here's what I would do. First, kind of some philosophical things, and then, the practicalities of it. There are 2 guys that I've learned a lot about this from. One, his name is Tim Breen. He's one of the original guys that started Accenture. And he would rail into me when I was a much younger individual. That vision is just as much where you're coming from as where you are going. And it matters to fundraising. So when you're creating your fundraising plan, your past is just as important as your future. So let's say you got to $1 million or $2 million bucks. Well, where did you get that $2 million bucks from? A lot of people, when they try to get the next 2 million, will accidentally turn off something that's working that got them to the initial 2 million. So if you got your first 2 million from major donors, maybe you should think about getting your next 2 million by becoming better at doing more major donor work. If you got your first 2 million through hundreds of monthly donors, maybe double down on that. I once got called in to do a job for a big organization, $100 million plus organization that had lost half of its private revenue over the previous 2 years. Why? They decided they wanted to grow, and they turned off all the things that were actually working, and they were working just fine. So fundraising is not just about how much money you raise; it's about how much money you spend to raise that money. And if something is, so if you spend $1 to make $1, you're not impacting your bottom line. You can't expand. But if something in your past it's working, it can usually be optimized, which means you can raise $1 for less. Something new and flashy takes longer to optimize, so it's going to take you longer to raise more dollars. The next thing, another guy, and he's kind of famous. His name's Horst Schultz. He's the guy that started the Ritz-Carlton. And he has 4 rules of business that I translate into 4 rules of fundraising. The first is never lose a customer, never lose a donor. You want to retain your donors. Don't try to grow your next $1 million or $2 million in a way that's going to cause you to lose the ones that you already have. He then says, use your existing customers to get new ones. So I'll say, use your existing donors to get new ones. If they're major donors, ask them to, bring 3, 4, 5 friends along. If it's foundations, ask them to bring other foundations along. If it's monthly givers, ask them to invite friends and family. Then he says, charge as much as possible without breaking rule number 1. Get as much from your donors as possible without losing them. Have you asked them for more money? Do you know who could give more money in your portfolio? And 4th, do it as efficiently as possible. And having spanned both the for-profit and not-for-profit world, something I'll tell you, Brad, and I think it might be your experiences as well. Nonprofits are super conservative when it comes to money, but they have a very hard time understanding business efficiencies. And I'm not talking about overhead. Overhead starvation is real, and most not-for-profits need to spend more in fundraising and marketing and finance. I'm talking about efficiency. Can we do things well in a streamlined way and get as much for our spend as possible? So if I was with the client, what I would do is I would just look at all their data over the past 5 years. What's their revenue number? What's their donor retention rate? What segments of donors are they getting? How much are they spending to do that? And then that data paints a story for me. And it will tell me, where do we need to dump more fuel on a fire that's already burning? It'll tell me what we need to just to stop doing and what we need to kill. And then what do we need to start doing? So a lot of groups will just go out there when it's time to raise the next $1 million or $2 million, and they'll start just, throwing spaghetti to the wall that sees and see what sticks. But that wastes time and it wastes dollars. You need to be much more nuanced about it. Figure out how you can make the most money in the most efficient way to drive your ROI and ultimately your bottom line up.
Yeah, no, that's great. I love that answer. There are so many options out there to go and try to figure out what to do next. And that's where I do think somebody like you can help and say, look, there's a million things we can do, but I love you're tying it in. Okay, what have you done well? And even people may not even realize what they're doing well, And so, you're able to come in and highlight that, and then say, okay, let's do a little bit more of that maybe first, and just lean into that.
Yeah.
That seems to be our natural. If you did that and just fell into it anyways, you might have some really just kind of a good skill set there. So that's great. I love it. I love it. You started talking about ROI, and you started talking about just metrics and dollars and those kind of things. James, and this might be an unfair question, but how do you know if your fundraising function is effective or not? That's a pretty broad general question, but
Yeah.
what are some thoughts on that?
I mean, the ultimate role of fundraising is to source the funds that fuel your mission, right?
Yeah.
So you have to measure what matters. Are dollars coming in that allow you to do, what you're called as an organization to do? But that's hard because there are things outside of your control that you can't control. Markets go up and down, natural disasters happen, people lose their jobs, donors die. So what I tell clients and what I've always done in my career is figure out what process can you actually control and then measure that. So if you're talking, let's say major donors here, what's your cultivation process for major donors? And then measure that. How many new people are you calling a month? How many prospects do you have? How many prospects do you qualify or discover if they're a good fit for your organization a month? How many touch points do you have? Measure those things that you can control, because 9 times out of 10, when you focus on what you can control, the bottom line will go up. But if it's not going up, you can then reverse engineer and figure out, hey, where do I or my staff have a problem that we need to get more training for and skill up to get it better? Are we really bad at telling stories? Oh, no, it's not the stories everybody loves. It's, oh, we don't actually ever ask for the money. Oh no, our proposals stink. You can reverse engineer it to figure out where you're getting kicked in the teeth. So obviously measure the bottom line, but figure out the 4 or 5 things you look at every single month that you can actually control and focus on that.
Yeah, no, I love that. And yeah, you're speaking my love language there, because you're starting to talk data and metrics and those kind of things. So how does so CFO here talking to CDO, and sometimes that relationship can be a little bit difficult, and sometimes it can go well. I mean, as we're talking here, where have you seen good CFO or finance shops supporting the development shop, and vice versa? I mean, have you given any thoughts or examples to that?
Yeah, so I have 2, one on both sides of this.
Okay.
I remember, this was probably 20 years ago, got a fundraising job, and the finance director sat me down and said, son, this was back in the day, son, here's your goal.
Yeah.
And here's where you need to raise the money for. Yeah. I then took it to my boss. My boss had no idea. The CFO was trying to control fundraising going around the CDO. Neither that CDO or that CFO worked. They were both gone, within 6 months. It was a toxic, septic relationship.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, I had an amazing experience. This was even before, where the CFO of an organization, his name's actually Scott Landon. He's retiring later on this month. CFO executive of a really, really great organization. His heart and soul was fueling generosity. He knew that he needed other people that were out there casting a vision, giving the message, cultivating relationships for the finance work that he was doing to make sense. And he did everything in his power to facilitate that. And you know what happened?
What?
Everybody out there wanted to do as much as they can to facilitate Scott's work, in the finance office. And it taught me so much about how these roles, work together. Fundraisers who are out there that don't understand finance, they don't understand the budget. How do they know what dollar to raise? Because a dollar is not a dollar. A designated dollar and an undesignated dollar mean very different things in the financial world.
That's right.
If the fundraiser doesn't understand that, they're going to pat themselves on the back for both equally, when the undesignated dollar is a lot more valuable. On the other side, I've seen people in the finance office, say things like, well, just go and ask for the money. Stop being so afraid. They're forgetting that there's 20 things that they don't know that happens in the fundraisers world. But when these things, synergize together, awesome things happen. So, back to this client that we served together, one of my first calls was you. Was, hey, paint the financial picture for me going back a few years so I know what's happening. You said the biggest thing we have is we always end up great at the end of the year, but we have these, valleys and troughs. We need to steady our income. So we're building a monthly give product to help do that, because it serves both fundraising and finance, and the whole organization can go forward faster together because of it.
Yeah, no, I love it. I love it. That's great. Yeah, you brought up some really good things, like restricted funds versus unrestricted funds. That can always be a tricky thing between the finance department and development department. So making sure that you're on the same page there. Who's talking to the donor is another thing too. Is your accounting department talking to the donor or the development department? I mean, it just depends on certain things. And so communication is a great thing. But I love your example of the CFO. I mean, just being a fan, I'm a huge fan of the development department, because the budget doesn't exist without money and revenue and cash coming in, right? There's no way to try to be a steward of the funds if there's nothing coming in. And so, I'm a huge fan of the development department.
Yeah, and Brad, I can read a P&L and even create an easy one, but I can't do the work that you do, buddy.
Right. We're both needed. That's great. That's great. Well, good. Well, I'm just thinking too, as we kind of wind down here and look at things, I think one thing I want to make sure is sometimes I feel like maybe organizations think that the development department is just this separate kind of entity out there, and they treat them as such. Oh, just go out there and go raise that money kind of thing. But how would you suggest that the development department kind of stay close to the mission of the organization and is able to reflect that as they're talking to donors? Because it feels like there's somebody, maybe the program, kind of people and the organization are doing all the real work. But how have you seen it work well where the development department is connected in with the program so they know what's going on, so they can convey those great stories to the donors and those kind of things?
Yeah. Well, let me just piggyback on something you just said. You just, said real work in reference to the program team, which devalues the work of fundraising.
True.
And the real work can't help it unless this work, over here, happens. I think that this unfortunately happens in a lot of organizations. And you get resentment and animosity on both sides of the equation. The fundraising team will need people from programs to come and talk to donors. Well, why do they always need me to come, do their job, for them? Vice versa. I need more money. The fundraiser should just go raise me, another $1 million so I can do this thing. People talk past each other. And I think that's a failure of leadership and imagination inside organizations. When program work becomes sacred, to use religious language, and development work becomes secular, we've just ripped an organization apart. Okay, because it's all sacred. Stewarding and facilitating a donor journey takes a lot of skill, takes a lot of time, a lot of vulnerability. And if you mess it up, you lose a whole relationship. But on the other side, if you do it well, you've won a supporter for years, decades, even generations of families. So I think leaders need to cast the vision. No, this isn't more important. This isn't secular. This isn't sacred. This is all integrated together as things that are crucial for our mission succeeding. So that's one thing. It starts with leaders and imagination and casting that vision. The second thing is people need to be proximate together. Whether it's virtually or in person, they need to be able to be engaged in each other's work and be able to see what they're working on. this is an area that I think fundraisers are actually at a disadvantage, because fundraisers are by and large the only people in organizations that have a number next to their name. Everybody else in the organization knows if James did his job this quarter.
Right.
But if you're on the program team,
Mm-hmm.
I might never know if you did your job.
That's right.
But creating a level playing field. Hey, here are our goals. Here are our KPIs, our OKRs, our lead and lag indicators that are spread throughout the organization so everybody can support everybody else. I found is a really tactical way to help break down the division between the program teams and the fundraising teams.
No, that's great. That's great. Yeah, I love it. Yeah, that's really important, and thank you for that, because it does all go together. They've got to be working together, because one can serve it really serves the other, right? Like
That's right.
Like the donor team has to know what's going on in the program, and has to have that information and what's going to be close to that, so they can go out and propel that to the donors, and then vice versa. The donor team's got to execute so the program can do their work too. So it's not either or, it's both and. That's all I like.
Yeah.
Well, good. Well, as we wrap up here, let me just bring it down and kind of summarize a few things that we put here. So you mentioned this earlier as we have our last 3 nuggets here. You say it's okay to ask for help. You shouldn't have to do this alone. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, so many, especially those small and medium size, going back to the very beginning of our conversation, the 2% that, broach $1 million, the 0.4% that broach, 10 million. I don't think organizations should have to do this alone. And that's why I think guys like you and I, are in this. Most of those small organizations that never broach, $1 million or 2 million, they can't afford to bring you and I in-house.
Right.
We've worked for some really big shops. We're further along in our career. And what they do is they go hire someone who's 22, which is great. You should still do that. But it's going to take them 10 years to figure out what they don't know yet.
Right.
Organizations need to raise their hand and say, hey, I'm on to something. I've really solved this problem. I need to grow to the next level. Help me do it. And then guys like you and I can help them hire over the course of 12, 18, 24 months, the talent that's going to sustain it for 5, 7, 10 years.
Right.
And I think there's, because the not-for-profit world is, it's wonky, it's philosophical, it's a lot of smart, people are ashamed to say, hey, I don't have this part figured out. Don't do that. Just raise your hand and ask for help, and someone's going to be there to help.
That's right. I love it. Yeah, absolutely. Just getting that expertise in hand, even if it's a slice like you and I, that slice of expertise to somebody that has the 20 years of experience is going to have so much of a bigger impact in a return on investment. So yeah, I love that. The second thing that you say is don't get in your own way. Have a you before me mentality with donors. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, a lot of people ask in these conversations, I'm afraid of fundraising. I don't know what to do. Or to your question about, how do you pair up a consultant with a not-for-profit? Don't get in your own way. Asking for money is not about you. It's not about you at all. You have to have a you before me mentality. It's all about the giver. It's all about the donor. Your job is not to be the hero in that conversation. Your job is to be a facilitator and a guide in that conversation. And a lot of people say, I'm afraid. What if they tell me no? So what if they tell you no? It's not about you to begin with. It's about helping them go on a journey to solve a problem they care about. Right. So where I see a lot of leaders and a lot of organizations getting stuck is they get in their own way because they put themselves before the mission. They put themselves before the donor, and they don't guide and facilitate. They try to, you can't convince anybody to do anything. Like, I can't convince my kids to do anything. I got to guide them to the point of,
right.
That. Same thing with donors. You have to guide and facilitate. Don't get in your own way. Don't be a hero.
Yeah, no, I really love that mentality. And I've heard it put well. You're really helping that donor find joy in giving. You're finding the joy in giving. And that's how our hearts were made. That's how we're made as people. We naturally want to give to others. And so all you're doing from a development perspective is you're trying to help shepherd that and bring that through and let them have that experience of joy, not you, right?
100%. Donors love to give. Sometimes they do it from compulsion, but that's not a good gift. When donors love to give, they just do it more and more and more. And it's this amazing thing. to
Yeah.
watch.
No, I love it. I love it. All right. Last little nugget we're going to drop here is the number of dollars. Here we go. Let me get it back up there. The number of dollars you raised does not determine the value of your impact. It determines the value of your fundraising program. You mentioned this, but explain that to me.
Yeah. I've worked for big organizations, and I've consulted with small organizations. Some big organizations have amazing, amazing, amazing programs and solutions and services. Other really big organizations, they're just okay. Some small organizations have found something so impactful, and they're just trying to figure out how to scale it. Just because you're small does not mean that your missional impact is not significant. It just means you haven't figured out your fundraising program yet. So don't let the fact that you're not $100 million organization, deter you. Figure out how to get the money that you need. And so many people will say, oh, we're just small, we can't do that much. No, you might be doing a ton already. You just don't have a great fundraising program. So let's build a good one, for you. I'm really passionate about this point, if you can't tell, because every solution out there was subscale at some point. And somebody needed to come along and finance it, resource it, fundraise for it, so it could actually get to the size that it requires to be to solve the problem. So I hate when small, little, really impactful not-for-profits say, oh, we just can't do it. We don't have the money. Well, let's go figure it out, man.
Yeah, no, I love that. I love that. It's really good. And it's really, really exciting. Great way to kind of land the plane here as we figure out that there's the opportunity out there. It's just getting the right information and the right expertise involved to help you make it happen. And so this is great. Well, thank you, James, for being on. And we are wrapping up here our Nonprofit Nugget show. Again, I'm Brad Tisdale. And if I can help you in any way with your nonprofit, figure out your finances or gain clarity on your operations, then please reach out to me. I'm on LinkedIn. My email is brad@btadvisors.co. James, how can people get in touch with you?
Yeah, if you want to get in touch with us, if you want to go to the next stage in your fundraising journey, also on LinkedIn, that's where I hang out online. And you can email me at James at the Kipos Group, KIPOS Group.com, James at the KiposGroup.com.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, James. Really enjoyed it. Appreciate the time.
This was fun, Brad. Talk to you soon.
All right. Thanks.